A big hello and warm welcome to my dear students. You know that the budget is round the corner. The budget is released every year on the 1st of Feb. And you also know that economic survey is released one day prior to the budget. But this year, instead of economic survey being released on January 31st, the economic survey has been released on January 29th. So what is so special about this year's economic survey? Or is there something special or not? That is what we are here to examine. We would also examine the most important theme of this year's economic survey and try to see that how does that theme differ from the economic survey of the last year. This would give us an idea about what is the government's blueprint for the next 1 year in terms of growth and development. So this is how the front page of the economic survey looks like, and you can clearly see that there is a map of India, and you can see that there are some containers inside it, and you can also see that there is a world map, which means that economic survey is giving a lot of importance to how India is placed across the world in terms of production and trade. And we can also see that there is this aircraft, which means that we are talking about connectivity. There's this sea route, which clearly talks about trade. So which means that trade is important, industries are important, connectivity is important. What is India doing compared to what is happening across the world is also important. So these are some of the important things that you will find in this year's economic survey. But we have yet not discussed what is the theme. So to explain to you what is the theme of the economic survey, first I'll give you a very simple representation of what the government wants to say through this document this year. So this year, when I got the economic survey, you can see that it's very voluminous, and this is the first page. So if you put them like this is how bulky the economic survey is, which means that definitely something has changed. So let me show to you what is the theme of the economic survey this year. Now, this is India. Now the economic survey says that across the world, so for example, this is US, UK, China, this is Europe. So economic survey says that if you see across the world, there is a chaos. And whenever there is chaos, there is uncertainty. And wherever there is uncertainty, there is an element of risk. So the economic survey says that India is placed in a world where there is chaos. Because of chaos, there is uncertainty, and because of uncertainty, there is risk. Now, economic survey is trying to tell us that in this situation, what should be the attitude of the government, first of all. So that attitude is the most important theme of the economic survey. And the attitude should be, according to economic survey, the attitude should be that if there is a problem around us, we should accept the problem, that yeah, there is a problem. And then we should make our plan by incorporating that problem or risk, by accepting that there is a problem. And when you accept there is a problem, obviously you will create solutions which will help you to overcome the problem. That is what the economic survey says. So economic survey says attitude is very important. So that attitude becomes the first theme. Second, economic survey says with a good attitude, you need to have a good policy also. So first is attitude, and the second is suitable policy. So these two things, the attitude and the policy, if we get it right, then India will be able to achieve inclusive growth. So what is the theme of the economic survey this year? The theme of the economic survey revolves around attitude and policy. So that is what we can say that is the theme of the economic survey in very simple terms. But to be technically correct, let us go a little deep into it. So for example, let's see, what does the economic survey tell us? So economic survey tells us that what should be the attitude of the government, because we know that there is chaos around us. So the attitude should be entrepreneurial policy making. So what should we behave like? We should behave like an entrepreneur. So when you have an attitude of entrepreneur, what would you do? You would accept that there is a risk, because whenever you do business, what do? You know that in business there is a lot of risk, so you make plans accordingly. So for example, I am manufacturing chocolate. For chocolate, I need, for example, let's say milk. Milk is one of the, sugar are the two inputs I use. So I will have a supplier of milk and sugar. But if I'm a businessman, I'm an entrepreneur. What is entrepreneurial attitude? So the attitude is, if my original supplier of milk and sugar, they are not able to deliver the milk and sugar to me, will I stop production? No. What will I do? I will assume that if they stop production, what should be my backup? That is the attitude of an entrepreneur. So government of India should behave like an entrepreneur in that sense. So economic survey says that this is called as entrepreneur-like attitude and policy making. That is the first theme of the economic survey. I'll talk more about it in some time, but that's the first theme, okay? The second theme, economic survey says that there are two types of policies. One that a country should make for short term and the one that the country should make for long term. So, for example, whenever you participate in a race, athletics, there are two types of race that you can participate. One is marathon, one is sprint. What is the meaning of marathon? You save your energy and you know that marathon has to be, completed in a longer duration. So you design your energy and policy like that. Similarly, whenever a country wants to achieve growth or development for that matter, so there are two things that the country should target. What is the immediate thing that we must achieve? For example, skill development. We cannot compromise on that. So that should be our immediate target. But capacity building is long term, right? So the economic survey this year says that India should have two kinds of policies. One is short term policy and one is medium to long term policy, and both policies should exist together. And in fact, one interesting point by economic survey calls the short-term policy as a sprint, the long-term policy as marathon. Capacity building is marathon. Then the economic survey says that even our long-term policy should be designed as if we have to achieve it in a time-bound manner. We cannot take very long-term to achieve policies. So economic survey says our marathon should also be designed like a sprint. So our long term should also be very efficient so that we should be able to achieve it in a shorter span of time. That is the second theme of the economic survey. The third theme of the economic survey is, economic survey says that state capacity, which means capacity created by the government plus society, and deregulation. Deregulation means unnecessary rules and regulations should be removed, or it should be rationalized, it should be improved. For example, we had labor laws in India, very complicated, huge number of labor laws. So what has the government done? Government has converted or rationalized a huge number of labor laws into 4 labor codes. That is called deregulation. And those rules and regulations which are not required as of now, we should remove them because they were important 50 years back. Now they are not important. We should remove them, right? So the economic survey says state capacity of the government plus role of society, and third, deregulation. Economic survey says if these 3 things are done in the right manner, India can achieve the target of Viksit Bharat. So that is the third theme of the economic survey. So, if somebody will ask you what are the themes of economic survey, what will you say? 3 things. One is entrepreneur-like attitude. When there is uncertainty or risk, you should behave like an entrepreneur. It doesn't mean that you should behave like a capitalist. It simply means that you should behave in a fear-free manner, in a bold manner. You should not be fearful. That's what it says. And number 2, we should have both long-term and short-term policies. And number 3, it says that state capacity, society, and deregulation, these 3 things should be done in a right combination. Now, this is the economic survey of 25-26, which means the current economic survey. Let's go back to the last year's economic survey and let us see what the last year economic survey talked about. In the previous last year economic survey, the theme was deregulation, which means that even then the government of India said that our rules and regulations should become more people-friendly. Right, that is deregulation, which means we are talking about good governance here. Number 2, ethical wealth creation. So in the last year's economic survey, the government was saying that our businesses should be more fair. They should have a fair conduct, honest conduct to create wealth. So government is saying we are not against business, but don't act in a manner which leads to, for example, generation of black money or which damages the competitive spirit of business, right? So fair business should be conducted in India. And number 3, structural reform. So for example, labor reform, GST, industrial policies, MSMEs, these are structural reforms of India. So the government said that last year the economic survey was focusing on 3 things: deregulation, ethical wealth creation, and structural reform. So you can clearly see the difference. The common point between last year and this year is the deregulation point. Otherwise, there are 2 new points which have come. And why have 2 new points come? Based on the global scenario, right? Now, so let me tell you something about this year's economic survey. As I told you that this year's economic survey is voluminous. It's huge. Why is it huge? That is what we want to see. So for example, you can see that this is the last year's economic survey. In last year's economic survey, there were 13 chapters. Right? These are the 13 chapters. And for example, let's see the chapters. The first chapter was State of the Economy, which gives basically overview of the Indian economy. The second is Monetary and Financial Policy, means banking, capital market. The third is External Sector. External sector is like balance of payment, etc. So then you have inflation, medium outlook, investment, and all these chapters were there. Now this year what the government has done is, new chapters have been added this year. So for example, you see last year 13 chapters, this year 17 chapters. In fact, if you see chapter number 16, it has two parts, 16 part 1, 16 part 2. So there are in total 17 chapters this year. So you can clearly see that volume is little high, on the higher side, number one. Number two, if you see this year, normally the economic survey used to be like this, like last year only. State of the economy, monetary policy, external sector. This year, the government has changed the sequence. So for example, see the first is state of the economy, which is obvious. Look at the second chapter. This time, the second chapter is fiscal development. Fiscal policy means policy of the government related to revenue, policy of the government related to expenditure, right? Taxes, etc., subsidies. This is the second chapter this year. Third chapter this year is monetary policy. Fourth chapter is balance of payment, which means external sector, export, import, trade, etc. So this year, as you can see, after the first chapter itself, there has been a change in the sequence. You know what government is saying? So this year, the chief economic advisor is saying, and the government is saying, that they have realigned the chapters in order of their importance and depth, conceptual depth. Which means that now we know that since it's a government document, that if some chapters are prioritized, for example, fiscal policy is the second chapter, it clearly means that government is giving a lot of importance to revenue, expenditure, taxes, non-taxes, etc. Which means we know government's priority, because government itself has said that we have given the chapter sequence in terms of our new priority. All right, so this year we know which chapters are important. So if you're preparing for UPSC, you know that which chapters to focus upon first of all. Okay, so first thing is that chapters have increased. Second thing is realignment. There is a third thing which is very interesting. So what the government has done is this time in economic survey, to explain the medium and long-term policy of India. Three new themes have been introduced in the economic survey this year. And these three themes have been written in the form of something like an essay. Right. So what are these three themes? First is artificial intelligence. So a huge number of pages have been devoted to artificial intelligence, and they have said that those industries where artificial intelligence are being introduced, they will invest a lot in AI, and those industries which do not move along the new demands, like they do not integrate artificial intelligence or new technology, they will find it very difficult to survive. So AI is one of the finest inclusions in the economic survey. The second is the new economic survey also talks about challenges of quality of life in cities. It says that since India is urbanizing very fast, so there are new challenges which are emerging in cities, infrastructure challenge, governance challenge. So they're talking about those things. And the third thing is role of state capacity and private sector in achieving strategic resilience. So, for example, let's say that India was importing this pen earlier. Now, because of the global challenges and chaos, those countries which were giving us this pen, now they have denied that they will not give the pen. So now comes the role of government and private sector to ensure that they somehow create this pen in India so that our demand is fulfilled. This is called resilience. So how you withstand, how you face a difficult situation is called resilience. So if our government has the capacity, private sector plays an important role, of course we'll be able to handle the situation. That is the third essay which is there in this year's economic survey. So this is very much the structure of this year's economic survey. Now, if you recall, we had discussed when we started the session that this year the government is talking about business-like attitude that should come in the government. What is this business-like attitude? So basically there is this book which is the Entrepreneurial State. It has been written by Mariana Mazzucato. So this is one of the very sort of popular books where it talks about role of government and private. It also talks about what should be the attitude of the government and private whenever there is chaos, there is uncertainty. So the economic survey has borrowed this term the entrepreneurial state and said that government of India should act like an entrepreneurial state. What is this entrepreneurial state? What is the meaning of this? What is this new attitude that the economic survey is talking about? So let me tell you. So for example, if government of India has to behave like an entrepreneurial state, there are 4 attributes that the government must show. The first attitude is that first of all, the government should accept that there is risk. So for example, you know that there is trade war happening. We know Russia-Ukraine is a problem. We know that US is entangled in some friction and issues with Iran, with Venezuela. We have seen all this. So the first thing is US has been putting tariffs on India also. So the first thing that an entrepreneurial state does is, whosoever does business, they first accept that there is a risk. Once you accept there is a risk, then whatever plan you make your plan accordingly. Don't make your plan thinking that you are in a la-la land and there is no problem in the world and nothing will happen to you. No, come out of your la-la land and you accept there is a problem and then you plan accordingly. That is the first attitude of entrepreneurial state. So don't avoid risk, embrace it. That's number 1. Number 2, it says that, sometimes what happens is, sometimes things don't go according to us. So we feel that, okay, today it's not good for us, tomorrow when it will be good, I will act accordingly. But today I will not act. Today I will just wait for good times, good days to come. So entrepreneurial state or a business-like attitude is that don't wait for good days to come. Whatever is there, you start acting accordingly by accepting that there is a risk and you act accordingly. You make your plans. And when the good days will come, you change your plan. But don't wait for the good days. That is the second one. So can act before certainty emerges. So business-like attitude is whenever there is a problem, you keep acting. Keep taking steps, keep experimenting. When you experiment, you will fail, but keep experimenting. Be a little bold. So this is also the third attitude, which is experimentation and that bold attitude. That whatever is the situation I accept, I'll act accordingly. So this is the third attitude. And the final fourth attitude is that if there is problem in life, first you accept the problem, you act accordingly, you do some experiments, but keep moving. You might have heard this, that if you can run, you should run. If you can walk, you walk. If you can crawl, crawl, but keep moving. That is what they are saying. So they are saying that when situation is against you, for example, trade war is happening, etc. India should not say that, now I will not trade, now I will not talk, let me reduce production. No, you try to increase domestic consumption. You try to increase domestic trade. You try to find new partners. If US is putting tariff against you, you try to find good partners in Europe. You try to find it in South America, like in Africa. Diversify. So it is saying that one should not act in a paralyzed manner, that, oh, I can't do anything now because somebody has acted against me. No, that is not the attitude of an entrepreneur. So this economic survey says these are the 4 attitudes that India should adopt. This is called as the entrepreneurial state. This is the definition of an entrepreneurial state. Now guys, so let us have a quick overview of the Indian economy, how Indian economy is behaving in the chaotic world order, right? So for example, let's see this. So let's look at the growth which is happening in US. We are looking at the rate of growth of GDP, and these are IMF figures. So if you look at the rate of growth of US, you can clearly see rate of growth of GDP in 2025, 26, 27, 2.1, 2.4, 2.0. Latin America and Caribbean, again 2.4, 2.2, 2.7. Sub-Saharan Africa, it is in the range of 4.5. In the European area, it's 1.4, 1.3. Middle East and Central Asia, again around 4. If you look at emerging and developing economies taken together, all the developing economies of the world taken together, and Asia, so around 5. Now, as per IMF, look at the rate of growth of GDP of India. 2025 it was 7.3%, 2026 it is projected to be 6.4, 27 it is 6.4, which means the economic survey calls India as an oasis of macro stability in turbulent world. So world is very disturbed, and economic survey says India is showing macroeconomic maturity and stability, right? That is what it says. And the second, you can see, so this was IMF, by the way. This is the projection of IMF, okay? As you can see. This is IMF. Now let's look at the economic survey. Economic survey says that our rate of growth of GDP, so according to IMF is 7.3%. According to our economic survey, it is 7.4%. And economic survey says that in 26-27, it will be somewhere around 6.8 to 7.2. But our economic survey also says that this is a big range because of global uncertainty. They have taken a range, but economic survey says India should be able to pull off 7% easily. Around 7% we will be able to pull off. And if you see, IMF also says something around 6.4, 6.5. Now, if you look at the per capita net national income, so which means what is the income earned by every individual in India per capita, that is also increasing. It's like 2.2 lakhs at current prices. Right, so it is also increasing. Per capita income is also increasing. Rate of growth of GDP is also increasing. So in terms of GDP, we are doing well. Now, the economic survey says that only growth is not important. Inflation also needs to be looked into. So let us look into inflation. So if you look at inflation, you can clearly see that there is this headline CPI. How do we measure inflation in India? What is the policy measure of inflation? Headline CPI, Consumer Price Index. So you can see that there is a good drop in inflation. It's 1.7%. You can see the food price inflation. So what is the inflation in food price? Minus 1.7, which is food prices are going down. Normally around November, December, January, you will see that the food prices are typically a little low. But this time it has been more low. Now you can see core inflation. What is core inflation? See, core items are those items in which you will not generally see the rise in price. You will see generally they don't jump too much in terms of price. For example, refrigerator, television, etc. You will not see huge jump in price. So in India also, in those items where normally price should not have jumped, actually price has not jumped. So it's a good news. So they are saying that if you exclude gold and silver from core items, because gold and silver we saw because of global issues also, the gold and silver prices were high. If you remove gold and silver, in other core items, we saw that price was very stable. So inflation wise, we have been very stable. So now government is saying two things. Government is saying we are expecting very good growth in future and inflation will be normal. So whenever inflation is not there and growth is high, that means your nominal growth is also high, real growth is also high. So government is saying our growth will be high. But don't you think that the government is talking in a slightly paradoxical manner? Because government is saying there is global chaos. Then the government is saying that in global chaos also our growth will be high. How will our growth be high in global chaos? So I'll tell you. For example, look at the equation of GDP or output. A very simple equation, macroeconomics related to GDP or output is equal to consumption plus government expenditure plus investment plus net export. So this is private final consumption expenditure. See, consumption by you and I, consumption by households mainly. This is government expenditure, this is investment or capital formation, and this is net export. So government is saying that what has happened in India is that our GDP rate of growth is high. See, it's high. Now, one of the reasons that the economic survey says that our GDP rate of growth is high is because our real private final consumption expenditure has been really good. Dekho, here it has come little down, right? If you see from 24 to 25, it came little down, but doesn't matter. Economic survey says the range is good. The range is around 7%. So there is roughly around 7% increase in the private final consumption expenditure, around 7%. And similarly, in the government final consumption expenditure also, you can see there is increase, more than 7.5%. So our private final consumption expenditure means expenditure by you and I is increasing by 7%, expenditure by government is increasing by 7%. How does government spend? Government buys goods and services. Government also invests in infrastructure called capex. So if you see private consumption and government consumption, right? Private consumption is consumption by you and I. So because of that consumption, the government is saying that they are very hopeful that our GDP will be okay. One of the things of worry for the government is investment part. Because our businesses need to be motivated to invest. Because imagine I'm producing the pen, but because of global chaos, I'm not able to export the pen. I'm only able to sell domestically. So will I reduce the production of my pen? Maybe yes. That is a thing of worry for the government, that okay, people are buying, government is also buying, but how far can we buy? So we also need global trade. This is slightly a thing of worry. If we can take care of investment part, then our GDP will definitely be a decent figure. That is what the economic survey says. So we have seen the GDP and the inflation. Now we are going to see the overview of balance of payment, which means external sector of the economy. So see guys, the balance of payment, if you look at the account of the balance of payment, who prepares the balance of payment account for India? RBI, right? And currently RBI releases the BOP figures every quarter. Now they are planning to release it on monthly basis, maybe from this year. So let us see in balance of payment, what is the overview? So in balance of payment, we'll talk about three things: current account, capital account, and foreign exchange reserves, forex reserves, right? What is current account? In current account, what do? We look at export and import of goods, and means merchandise, and invisibles. Invisibles means services, transfers, remittance, these things, right? And in capital account, what do we look into? Foreign investment, external commercial borrowings, right? These are the things that we do. NRI deposits. And in forex reserves, we look at the dollars, the euro that is coming to India, etc. Right? Gold bought by RBI. So let us see what is happening in our balance of payment. So if you look at the current account, see, something interesting is given in this year's economic survey. Economic survey says that in the year 2005, if you look at India's share in global merchandise export, merchandise means export of goods. So if you look at India's share in the export of goods in the world, it was 1%. Now in 2024, it is 1.8%, which means that the overall picture is that the share of India's export of goods in the global trade has increased, which means India's share in global merchandise export, which means global export of goods, has actually doubled. From 1%, it has become roughly 1.8%. So it's doubled. So that's what the government is saying, that we are cruising along. Number two is rate of growth of service export. We export services also. India is known to be a service economy. So our rate of growth of services is 13.6%. Right, so that is also a good figure. Now remittances, if you look at remittance, remittance means the money which is sent by the Indians who are staying abroad, they send money to India. So in remittance in 2024, we got $135.4 billion, which is the world's highest remittance. So India has been receiving very high remittance. Our service sector is growing. Service sector export is growing fast. Our merchandise export is also slightly growing, which means our export of goods is also growing. So these are the good news from the economic survey as per the survey 2025. Now, let's look at the forex reserves. Why is forex reserve important? Forex reserve is important because suppose government of India has borrowed some money from outside India. Suppose we have borrowed money from World Bank, IMF, or some other countries, etc. Now, if India has to return the money, and suppose there is a problem in India, who will help us? RBI. So whenever we borrow money from outside, it's a debt, it's a burden. So if there is some crisis in the country and we are supposed to return the money, how will we return? That is why forex reserves are important. So that is one of the reasons. Second reason, suppose that COVID situation came, right? And India had to import a lot of medicine, medical equipment. That time also we required forex reserve. So forex reserve gives you a cushion, a strength to face difficult scenarios. So on January 16, 2026, India's forex reserve was $701.4 billion, which you can see here that how the forex reserve of India is rising, isn't it? So that's number one. Number two, if you look at import cover of India, what is the import cover of India? 11 months. Import cover means that if RBI helps the government of India to continuously import, for how many months can we import using RBI's help, which means RBI's forex reserve? 11 months. That is also good. Now, the third thing is, look at this ratio. Forex reserve upon external debt is 94%, which means if India has borrowed $100 from outside India, from IMF, World Bank, etc., we have borrowed $100. So what is our forex reserve? If IMF and World Bank call us and tell us that, hey, India, return the money. So are we going to be able to return the money? Yeah, 94% of the money we can easily return. Why? Because if our external borrowing is $100, our forex reserve is $94. So we can easily return. So forex reserve plays a big role in giving cushion to us so that if we have borrowed from outside, we can easily return. So these are some of the things that is mentioned in this year's economic survey. As you can see, this is a snapshot from the economic survey. Our forex reserve has increased, import cover has become 11 months. Our external debt has reduced. External debt means the money that we borrow from outside India. And how do we borrow money from outside India? So we borrow it in dollar, we borrow it in rupee, we borrow it in various currencies. So external debt to GDP ratio, which means our external borrowing upon our GDP, right? That was earlier 23.8%, now it is 19.2%, which means we have reduced our external borrowing. Current account balance. What is the meaning of current account balance? Current account balance means, as you can see, this is current account. Current account balance means, is India importing more or is India exporting more? Normally we import more. So our balance is always on the negative side. We import a lot. Our import is always higher than export. So that is why our balance is always on the negative side. So if you look at India's figure in 2014, our current account balance was negative, minus 1.32. If you compare it with 2026, it is minus 0.8. So government is saying that, see, it has improved. Earlier it was very high in terms of negative value. Now its value has reduced, which means current account has improved compared to 2014, which means in last 10 years, our current account deficit, we always used to import more and export less. Our export is rising. So government is saying that our current account deficit is improving. But guys, here I would tell you one thing, that if you compare India's current account deficit in 2025 and 2026, you will see that in 2026, let's say around January or 2025 last quarter, which means that we are talking about October, November, December, around that part, the previous year. So if you see around October, November, December or around January with this year, our current account deficit is slightly higher compared to 2024. So our current account deficit is slightly getting worse. Why? Because of rising metal prices in the world, rising food prices in the world, because we are not able to export a lot now. Till last year we were doing okay. In 2024 we did okay. 2025 trade war happened. We were not able to export a lot. So yes, things have become slightly bad for us. But here the government is not comparing 24 and 25. Here the government is comparing 2014 and 2025. That's why it looks better. If you compare 24-25, it will not look that good. Okay. So now let us look at the fiscal health of the government, which is the most important chapter in the economic survey as per the government of India this year. Fiscal health means we are talking about the government budget. So in budget, what are the two things that we see? First is the revenue budget and the second is the capital budget. Revenue means day-to-day income and expenditure, which does not create asset and liability. And capital budget means that part of the government revenue and expenditure which either changes asset or liability position of the government of India. So for example, you can see that the revenue budget of the government can be divided into two parts: revenue receipt, revenue expenditure. So what is revenue receipt? Revenue receipt means, for example, the tax collection, non-tax collection. And what is revenue expenditure? Salary, pension, these things paid by the government. So if you look at the revenue receipt, the rate of growth of revenue receipt of the government is 9.2% in the year 24-25, which means the government's collection of taxes, non-taxes has improved. Similarly, if you look at the rate of growth of expenditure, revenue expenditure means day-to-day expenditure like salary, pension, etc., subsidies, it's 1.8%. So government's revenue expenditure is increasing by 1.8% and revenue receipt is increased by 9.2%. So revenue receipt is increasing at a high speed. Now, as I was telling you, that in revenue receipt, what do you include? Taxes, non-taxes. So let us look at the gross tax collection of GST. So have we been collecting a lot of GST? Yeah, a lot. Our rate of growth of GST collection is 6.7%. Every year it is rising by 6.7%. That's a good thing. Now, are people paying more taxes, by the way? Yeah, they are. Direct taxes. Direct taxes means income tax, corporate tax, individual income tax. So for example, in the year 2021, how many people were paying direct taxes? 6.9 crore. In the year 2024, how many people are paying direct taxes? 9.2 crore. So see, number of taxpayers have increased. This is called tax base. So GST collection is increasing, number of people who are paying direct taxes, that is also increasing, right? So that is considered to be a healthy sign. And direct taxes are progressive. That is why if direct tax collection is rising, it's good for the society and the economy. Indirect taxes are regressive in nature. They lead to increase in inequality. Now look at the capital budget. What do you include in capital budget? So for example, if Government of India sells a company, disinvestment or privatization, government gets money. That is called receipt. And what is capital expenditure? Government of India, for example, returns somebody's loan. Government of India constructs roads, buys a property. That is capital expenditure. So if you look at the capital expenditure of Government of India, the effective capital expenditure of the government. What is effective capital expenditure, bacho? So effective capex of the government means the capital expenditure by central government directly, if central government has constructed infrastructure or bought properties, etc., right, that is called capital expenditure. Plus the center also gives some grant in aid to the state. So suppose I am center, I have spent 11 lakh crore rupees on construction of infrastructure. That is my capex. But I also gave 4 lakh crore to the state, and state government used it in the construction of infrastructure. So that 4 lakh crore is also the capex of India. So the grant in aid by center to state, which is used for capex. These two things together is called effective capex, right? So effective capex of India in the pre-COVID time, which means before 2019, effectively India was creating infrastructure, etc., at 2.7% of GDP. So if our income was, for example, let's say that our national income is 100 rupees, right? Our national income is 100 rupees, which is GDP. Example, our GDP is 100 rupees. Out of GDP, how much do we spend in constructing infrastructure, for example? So before COVID, it was 2.7 rupees, and now it has become 4 rupees. So our GDP is 100, now we are spending 4 rupees in infrastructure development. So that is called as capex, effective capex. In effective capex, what do? We add the capex, which means capital expenditure by center, plus that capital expenditure of the state, which was given to the state by the center in the form of grant, right? So that is one of the good things. Now, what is the rate of growth of increase in capital expenditure in India? So central government is constructing more infrastructure, but what is the increase in capital expenditure every year? So its rate is 6.7%. So there is one good thing which is mentioned in the economic survey this year, that our rate of growth of revenue expenditure is 1.8% per year, and our rate of growth of capital expenditure is 6.7. So this is greater than revenue, which means our capital expenditure is increasing at a faster rate compared to our revenue expenditure. And whenever capital expenditure grows fast, we say that quality of expenditure is good. So our quality of expenditure is getting better because we are constructing more infrastructure. That is called capacity building, right? Now, let's look at these numbers, some of these numbers from the economic survey. So as you can see, that gross tax revenue as a percentage of GDP, which means if our GDP is 100 rupees, so let's say our income is 100 rupees, so out of that 100 rupees, what is the contribution of tax revenue, gross tax revenue? So earlier it was 10.8%, now it is 11.5%. So our tax collection is improving as a percentage of GDP. Our personal income tax collection is also improving. Income taxes are paid by you and I and the companies. So corporate income tax and personal income tax. So here the personal income tax is increasing, right? So earlier it was 2.4% of GDP, now it is 3.3%. And as we have already seen, that number of taxpayers have also increased from 6.9 crore to 9.2 crore. Now, and as I told you that our quality of expenditure is also rising or improving. Now let us look at the trend in the deficit. See. So what is the condition of fiscal deficit? Fiscal deficit means burden on the government. So fiscal deficit in 2025-26 is 4.4% of GDP. So it has come down from 4.8%. Our revenue deficit has also come down. As you can see, that revenue deficit is also down 1.7 to 1.5, and our primary deficit also down 1.3 to 0.8, right? So all the three deficits are down. So in UPSC, if they ask you the numbers, you can write, or if they ask you the trend, you can write. The deficit was only high in one of the years, it was COVID year. Other than that, you can see that it has been coming down between 21 to 22. That was also COVID year, slightly increased, but again came down. Now it is coming down only. So our deficits are also going down. Now, there is something related to banking also, which is a good news for all of us. It is mentioned in the economic survey. See, if I am a bank and I gave 100 rupees as loan, out of 100 rupees, 90 rupees came back to me, but 10 rupees did not come back to me. So this 10 rupees is called as non-performing asset. Or the technical term for this 10 rupees is called as gross non-performing asset. Now, suppose this 10 rupees is not coming and I'm feeling that what should I do for it? I am a bank. I have some other sources of income, for example. I have invested somewhere, I have other source of income. So through my other sources of income, if I take 3 rupees from my other sources of income and put it in my pocket, then this 10 rupees which is not coming, I can tell everyone that, hey, 10 rupees is not the burden for me because 3 rupees I have already kept from my other sources of income. Now 7 rupees is my burden. So whenever the bank is not able to get some funds from the borrowers, suppose 10 rupees is not coming back to me, then what I can do is I can create a provision through my other profits and I can keep it in my pocket and tell everyone that I'm not worried because I have little bit in my pocket. I'm worried for the remaining part. So 10 rupees is not coming, but 3 rupees I have already arranged through other sources. So now 7 rupees is the burden. This 7 is called as net NPA, non-performing assets. So in India, what has happened? Gross non-performing asset has also come down. Net non-performing asset has also come down, as you can see. See, from 11.2% into 2018-19, it has come down to 2.2%. So gross NPA has come down and net NPA from 6% it has become 0.5%. So gross NPA is also down, net NPA is also down. Both have reduced, which means that our health of the banking system has improved. And by the way, you must be knowing that one of the main reasons for the NPA to come down is because in the year 2015, government started a program under Dr. Raghuram Rajan. The program was called as Asset Quality Review. What happened in Asset Quality Review? Dr. Rajan told all the banks that they have to report their real NPA. And if they hide, their licenses will be cancelled. So all of a sudden, you will see after 2015, NPA increased. So it's not that NPA increased. Actually, the banks honestly told the government that yes, we have NPA. Earlier, they were hiding it. So once we know what is the NPA, then we took steps to control them. So currently, our NPA is in a very healthy state. We should not worry about our NPA. Now, there is something interesting mentioned in the economic survey. Economic survey says that if you look at businesses of India, just for example, Bacho, this is a business of India. I am a producer. I am the owner of this business. Now, economic survey says earlier, the businesses in India used to take more loan from banks. Now, what has happened is they are taking loan from bank, but loan from bank has slightly come down. Now, businesses are also getting money from capital market by selling bonds and shares, IPO. So one of the trend in economic surveys that the money that the businesses used to take from bank is coming little down. But on the other hand, the money that the companies are getting from capital market is increasing. So companies are getting money. Earlier they were getting more money from banks. Now they are getting slightly more money. The tendency is to get money from also capital market. So this new tendency is growing now. Now, let us look at the employment figures in the economic survey. So, if you look, here, there is this data given in the economic survey which says our unemployment rate in the year 2017-18, this is pre-COVID, our unemployment rate was 6%. Now, in 23-24, our unemployment rate is 3.2%, which means drop in unemployment. Then the economic survey argues that one of the major reasons for the drop is the female labor force participation rate is increasing, which means the women are participating little more in the economic activities, especially in MSMEs, etc., and in activities related to agriculture, MSMEs, food processing industry. So earlier the female labor force participation rate was 23.3% in 17-18, but in 23-24 the female labor force participation is 41.7%. So if it increases little bit more, it will look as if it has doubled, which means more number of female are participating in the jobs compared to previous times. So that is one of the good things that has happened. Now look at the unemployment percentage in the year 2025. So in 2025, if you see quarter-wise, first quarter, unemployment rate was 5.4%, second quarter 5.2%, third quarter 4.9%, which means unemployment in the year 2025, according to Government of India, kept on falling. and women employment kept on increasing, right? However, I must tell you that there is one problem which the government is facing, which is called youth unemployment, which means the unemployment of the people in the age group 15 to 29 years. This unemployment is worrisome for the government because this unemployment is more than the average unemployment of India. It is close to 8 to 9%. Now, so what does the economic survey tell us? Economic survey says, mind you, we initially did this thing that economic survey is saying that our rate of growth of GDP in 2026-27 will be somewhere around 7%. IMF says 6.4%, isn't it? Why does economic survey says our rate of growth of GDP can be 7%? So economic survey says that there are three situations that can happen in 2026 this year. This is something new given in the survey. So economic survey says three situations can happen which India can face. So scenario number 1, scenario number 2, scenario number 3. So what is the first scenario or first situation that India will face? Say this. So the first situation that India can face, which can happen, is called as business as in 2025, but with less security and more fragility, which means whatever was there in 2025, last year, similar situation will happen. So last year what happened? US used trade war. When India was looking for some medicine, India was looking for tunnel digging machine, India was looking for some fertilizer, China was playing trade weaponization with India. So China was also playing hard game with India, US was also punishing India. So this situation was there in 2025. So economic survey says that can continue. And if that continues, economic survey says, then geopolitical and economic volatility will be there. We will never know what will happen. We will be confused all the time. Their economic survey says the role of government will be very important, so that if there is slowdown, government of India will spend more money to revive the economy. So they are saying their government role will be crucial. That is situation number 1. Situation number 2, economic survey says, is called as disorderly multipolar breakdown. So economic survey says what will happen is the world will be divided into different power blocks. So as you can clearly see, realignment of the power blocks is happening. So Russia, China, India, European Union, India, US and Iran are fighting. So there will be another power center. So economic survey says there will be different blocks in the world, multipolar world will happen. And what will happen because of that is there will be deep geopolitical rivalry. Now there will be more fights, and then there will be more trade wars. Everybody will punish everybody. This can also happen. When this happens, then the supply chain in the world will become political. So for example, let's say that China is supplying us raw material for medicine. Tomorrow China might say that I will not give you the medicine. I will not give you the raw material for medicine. These things can happen actually. So political, supply chain and financial market. So currently suppose Singapore is investing in India. Tomorrow Singapore will say I will not invest in India. These things can actually happen. Today Europe has signed a deal with us. Tomorrow Europe will cancel the deal. This can also happen. So economic survey says that there is a chance that the world will be more divided and politics will dominate economics. In this scenario, economic survey says that there will be trouble for India because India will have to decide whether to maintain autonomy, whether to go for growth or whether to maintain stability. All the three will not be possible. I'll give example. Suppose that US is pressurizing us by putting tariffs and US is saying don't trade with Russia. If India says I will trade with Russia, then US will punish us. But somehow we are able to maintain our autonomy. So if we maintain autonomy, our GDP will be compromised, stability will be compromised. All the three not possible. That is the second scenario. The third scenario is economic survey says is possible but less possible. So the third economic scenario that can happen is called systemic shock cascade. So here economic survey says countries across the world will invest a lot of money in artificial intelligence. So this is the first thing it says, and it says that those businesses which will not invest in AI, etc., they might be exposed to new realities. They might face threats and challenges. Then the economic survey says it might be possible that because of trade war and global volatility, capital market will be affected. Number 1. Number 2, suppose for example today we get technology from Taiwan that we might not be able to get. So technology will be impacted. Geopolitical rivalry will happen. So economic survey says worst case scenario is global financial market breakdown, countries will fight with each other, geopolitical rivalry will happen. And third is, nobody will share technology with each other. That can also be a problem. So all the three type of problems will be there. If it happens, all the three problem happens, then economic survey says that the world will move, especially India also, will move towards a new phase, which is called crisis. And this time, if the crisis happens because of trade war, it will be deeper than global financial crisis of 2008. But economic survey says it is less probable. So economic survey says the first two scenarios are more probable, where whatever happened in 25 will continue, or it will become slightly more aggressive. These two are the possibilities. Now the economic survey says, what should India do? If it happens, what should India do? Because we have to protect ourselves, right? We have to have business-like attitude. So what should India do? First of all, India should accept that by these three are possible. That is what they say, right? Business-like attitude, entrepreneurial attitude. And the second thing that we should do is we should frame policies accordingly. So let us see which policy should we frame. This is what the economic survey gives as a solution. So economic survey says that if we have to face the volatile world, then we have to focus on Atmanirbharta. This is called Atmanirbharta. And economic survey says this Atmanirbharta should be our biggest strength. So what should India do? India should do three things as per economic survey. Number one, Bacho, you must be knowing that we get a lot of raw material of medicine from China. We get a lot of inputs related to electronic industry from other countries. So economic survey says that India should act very smartly, and slowly we should start to reduce our import and we should start to produce it in India itself. So we should follow import substitution industrialization. Remember, in 5-year plans, we started to follow this in India after independence. So now economic survey says, since the global order is very disturbed, politically, economically, technologically, so we should not depend on others. We should try to create our own goods and services, which means that self-dependence, self-sufficiency. So first is that we should have domestic capacity building, intelligent import substitution. Those things which makes us vulnerable, we should try to produce on our own if possible. Number two, strategic resilience. Now it says that if US puts a tariff on India and says, I will not trade with you, we should have other partners from where we can get raw material and from where we can send our finished goods, like India has signed a deal with Europe. So if one country threatens you or troubles you, you should be able to have diversified market and diversified friends so that you can withstand and you can be resilient. This is called as a strategic resilience. Free trade agreements are a part of that. Third, strategic indispensability. Now, economic survey asks a very interesting thing. Economic survey says, suppose India breaks down, will it matter to the world? Economic survey says India should become that important that nobody should try to harm India, because if India breaks down, the world should break down. So what does the economic survey says? I'll give an example. Economic survey says, for example, let's say that you know that India is very good in production of vaccines. So suppose that India becomes an innovator in the formula of vaccine. We have the raw material also, formula also, right? So now economic survey says that if somebody tries to harm us by putting tariff, by harming us geographically, etc., will it affect the world's supply of vaccine? Yeah, it will. So now they are saying, economic survey says that India should develop those kind of technologies and India should become that important in the world supply chain that whatever is the most crucial element in the world, whatever is the most important thing that the world wants, some of those things India should supply. So if India is harmed, world will be harmed. So nobody would think about harming India to that extent. So we are saying that we should try to create more resilience and diversity. Strategic indispensable. So India should become indispensable for others. Right? These are the three things that we should be doing. These are the three pillars. If we follow it, these are called as three pillars of Atmanirbharta, which will help us to survive this global chaos. Now, this economic survey also says that how are we going to become that important for the world? Right? How should we become very important for the world so that without us, the world should not be able to progress? That is the level that India should achieve. How to achieve that? Number one, deregulation. So economic survey says whatever are unnecessary rules and regulations, we should remove them. just like we improved our labor laws. Number 2, infrastructure. Economic survey says focus on infrastructure. Number 3, economic survey says focus on technology. Fourth part, which is the most beautiful part this year related to economic survey, is the role of bureaucracy. So economic survey says that if India has to become indispensable, which means very important in the global system, then Indian bureaucracy has to play a very important role. I'll give an example, Bacho, that how Indian bureaucracy can play a very important role. See this, please. So for example, if you look at India in 1960s till 1980, what do you find? You find in India license Raj system, heavy regulation. If anybody wants to open a factory industry, it's so difficult to do. It's so difficult to get government permissions. And how was the bureaucracy acting? The bureaucracy was also acting very tough, right? Not very friendly towards business or people. But the same bureaucracy, what they did is, if you come in the middle 1980s mid, which means around 1985 onwards, you see that across the world there was a lot of development related to computers. So what did the bureaucracy in India do around 1985 onwards? See, the bureaucracy, what they started to do is they started to reduce the regulation, which means the tough regulations became little easy. Our bureaucracy played a big role in creating policies so that India could get more foreign exchange. If I am a factory owner, I want to buy some machines, import machines or export something. Because of our support from bureaucracy, export and import became more possible, which means that export and import became more easy. If I want to hold dollars, now I can. Earlier it was not possible to hold dollars beyond the limit, but now it was possible. So 1985 onwards, you will see bureaucracy played a big role in India by making better regulations, reducing unnecessary controls, improving forex reserves, by promoting export import, and also by promoting skill development in the required sector like IT sector. For IT sector, skill, education, these things were done by bureaucracy. Bureaucracy also played a big role by creating IT parks, information technology park, etc. And you know the result, what happened? Because of this role of bureaucracy, we saw how India became a superpower in software industry, in IT industry. Now this economic survey says that if India wants to become a very important player in the global supply chain, in the global value chain, which means India wants to create more products which are valued across the world, then bureaucracy has to play the same role that they played in 1985 in India, or around 1985 to 1990. Same role has to be played, which means regulations have to be improved. They have to become more proactive, people-friendly, business-friendly. They also have to, give good governance. So these are the things which will help India to become an important player in the global supply chain. So thank you so much. Hope you have understood the theme of the economic survey this year. If you use the content effectively in prelims, mains and interview, I'm sure that it will help you to get more marks. So thank you so much. All the best. God bless you and happy studying.